Hey there, welcome to the MLB DFS build. I'm Kevin Roberts. This is Taylor Smith joined with me. He's already laughing at me, so we're in a good place for sure. We do have a fun DraftKings main slate. I think there's 8 games tonight on tap, so it should be a fun one to go over. A little bit more games than we saw yesterday. Some sketchy pitching situations to be sure, and we also have a game at Coors Field, so that always makes for a fun slate. If this video helps you in any way, please give it a like and also subscribe to the channel so you can get alerted to future videos. I've been punching out a few long season fantasy draft advice videos, but also we'll obviously be covering NFL DFS when it rolls around in a little over a week here, and then NBA DFS when that comes back. So we're winding down here last month or so of regular season MLB DFS, so hopefully we can get to some big wins. Right away, Taylor, we got a pretty fun one as far as park and offensive upside with Boston hosting the Jays again. Chris Bassett goes up against Boston. And the other side, Brian Bayo, right? Yeah, he takes on the Jays. So Bayo is like pretty vulnerable on the left side. His strikeout rate dips by like 8%. He walks 10% of the time there, and he gives up a 212 ISO to lefties. So the Jays get the park upgrade. From the left side, they look pretty good. They have 5 projected lefties. So I do like the Jays a good amount here. I don't have any interest in Bayo. On the other side, Bassett's a good price at AK flat. It's just a really dicey park, and obviously Boston has a lot of power. He also has issues against lefties, 19.8% K rate against lefties with a 174 ISO and almost 11% walk rate. So honestly, both offenses look really good here. I do have a little bit of interest in Bassett just because the pitching situation on the slate is not super fun. But I don't feel good about it just because the park and Boston's offenses, they've got a lot of power.
Yeah, it's pretty scary for Bassett in this spot going into Fenway against a super lefty heavy lineup because his numbers against lefties are pretty atrocious. I feel like I want to get to Boston more than I am. I'm not getting to them much at all at the moment, which is a bit terrifying. But if you do get to them, I have no qualms with it. Bayo, not really on my radar. He's okay as an SP2 just because Toronto's not a particularly good offense, but not a huge strikeout team either, and they are cheap. So I kind of like Boston as a stack, but looks like they might be the more popular of the 2 offenses in this game, I think, because they're cheaper in general. It's not a bad spot either. Obviously, it's a good park for them. Bassett, like Bayo, is kind of on my radar as a super secondary SP2 in tournaments, but I don't have a lot of conviction with either of them, and I prefer to not get to them if I can avoid it.
Yeah, worth noting, Bayo averages just 10.8 fantasy points per game at Fenway, and in 2 meetings with Toronto, he's averaged 4.4 fantasy points. So, as you said, not really good spot for either team, and I think I have no issue with kind of favoring Boston here at all, but I just think both offenses look pretty darn good. I'm not going to go crazy overweight on them or anything, like go out of my way to target them, but obviously it's a game at Fenway with 2 offenses that do have power, so I definitely have a lot of interest. All right, best pitcher to slate is probably going to be Chris Sale coming at 11K flat. He did not do amazingly last time out against the Nats, but
he did not.
Yeah, I know. I used him too. I'm pretty sure we both touted him, and because that slate that he was on was not very good, and he looked like the runaway. No, it was him or another guy, but still, we liked him because he's Chris Sale. But there's no reason to get away from him here beyond price and ownership. He is going to be very, very, very chalky. But the Twins do strike out almost 23% of the time. He obviously has a very high K rate and is very, very good. Does not give up a lot of power. Does not walk many batters. So fuck it. We're back on the Sale train. I think the Twins are an okay GPP YOLO leverage stack. They do have a 173 ISO against lefties. They have the power to fuck shit up here, but I'm definitely going to be overweight or on par with the field with Sale here.
Yeah, I remember it was Rodon and Sale on the last slate because I remember I was getting 100% of Rodon, and then I wanted to limit that because he's Rodon. And then when I did that, I got like 60 of him, and then it flipped to 100 of Sale, and I was like, okay, that's fine. And then Sale fucking sucks shit. And
didn't Rodon kick ass too?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. A lot of fun that day. Yeah. This is a worse spot on paper for him. He's also still 11K, so that's a pretty steep price tag, but there's not a lot of pitching on the slate you're going to feel good about. So I'm getting to him and Freddie Peralta both quite a bit. I'm actually getting more Peralta at the moment. because he's cheaper, but no qualms with Sale. I'm not really going to stack Minnesota. I think it's a big enough slate to where I don't really need that direct leverage, even against a guy that's going to be owned by a third of the field or more. I'm just going to play him and hope for the best. I think Atlanta is an interesting stack against Festa just because he has been a bit vulnerable to power. He's also been good for strikeouts, and Atlanta will strike out a bit, but good offense overall. They're a bit cheaper than usual with guys like Urshela in the lineup and Whit Merrifield these days. So not my favorite stack, but they are decent, kind of on par with Toronto as a secondary stack for me. And Festa himself, I'm not really getting to on this slate.
Well, the nice thing about Festa is he's cheap and he has a really nice K rate. That's about it. He gives up a lot of power, so obviously the Braves, they do have some power. That not projecting with an elite ISO compared to some of the other teams we'll be talking about, but 157 ISO is not terrible. So they are definitely in play. You got Soler, you got I'm going to try any names tomorrow, but Matt Olson. I mean, they have a lot of power here. They just don't have any.
I'm getting to more of him than I thought. I think it's mostly because Jack Leiter might be more popular in that range, and Festa is probably the better pitcher overall right now.
That would definitely be true, yeah.
So Leiter's like a big prospect and all that, and he's facing the White Sox, so
right.
He
hasn't really shown anything yet.
No, but he's been in the majors like for 2 or 3 starts months ago, so who knows by now. But
that's true.
Festa, I think, is just kind of a lower owned. In theory, he's going to be lower owned pivot.
Yeah, this is probably a classic play both sides kind of situation. I think the Braves definitely profile really well here. But when you look at Festa and his price and that K rate, it's going to be hard not to include him a little bit in your player pools for sure. All right, we got a probably pitchers duel. We got the Padres at the Cardinals. Joe Musgrove will take on the Cardinals. On the other side, Andre Palante will take on the Padres. Neither of these offenses strike out. It's a pitcher park, and the pitching is okay. So I'm okay with the pitchers. Let's see. The price is on Palante is 7.5. That's fine. But the Padres don't strike out, so I'm not really eager to do that. Musgrove is coming in at where's 8.8. Feels a little steep for me, just because the Ks are not really there. I don't know. I definitely don't want the offenses in this spot, and I'm just not eager to especially chase Musgrove at that price because I don't know if the strikeout's going to be there. If I had to do something here, I guess I'd go Palante, but I really don't like it. This game's a fade for me.
Yeah, this one also has weather potentially, so another reason not to really like the pitching. I'm not getting to it regardless. Payante, no strikeouts there. Musgrove, not really either, and a bad strikeout matchup for both. I think the Padres are okay. I don't love picking on Payante and his high ground ball rate, but pretty good lineup overall. It's just kind of a slate with a bunch of offenses kind of stuck in the mid-range once you get past the first couple, like Coors and whatever else we'll get to. But I think San Diego is okay. If we get clearance to play this game, St. Louis is my lowest owned stack, so not really looking their way.
Yep. All right. Texas and the White Sox in Chicago. We got Jack Leiter, who we're talking about. You mentioned he is a talented prospect. Just so far, he has not shown much of anything in the majors. Tuki Toussaint looks to be the long reliever here after Chad Kuhl. So, yeah, that looks really fun. Rangers look awesome here. Their actual numbers across the board aren't that inspiring, but the matchup is very, very good. So I like them a lot. Texas bats, fire them up. I actually don't mind the Chicago bats either. If Jack Leiter is going to garner ownership, real quick, look at that. He's coming in, not that owned, 10% owned, or no, 7% owned, so 9% owned. Sorry, I don't know what I was looking at. But he's facing the White Sox, so it was his price, 7.01. I think you can consider Leiter for sure. But if that ownership ends up spiking, I would have a little bit of interest in the White Sox.
Yeah, I'm getting to the White Sox either way, which is pretty brutal, but it's an okay enough spot, and I don't think the bullpen behind him is very good either, and they're cheap. So okay with it. Texas is currently my third highest owned stack against those joke pitchers for Chicago, so no qualms with that. I'm a little concerned about playing a Rangers team at ownership. I assume they're not going to be flying under the radar, but good enough spot, great park, especially for power for the Rangers, and the pitching Like lighter's okay, but I said I slightly prefer Festa in that range, so I'll stick with it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how deep Toussaint goes, or if we just get like totally screwed over and Toussaint doesn't even pitch. I don't think it matters because they don't have a good pitching staff, anyways. But he has almost a 15% walk rate against lefties and 20% walk rate against righties. Small sample size to be sure this year, but if you look at last year, it wasn't that much better. 15 against left, 13 against right. So he'd be walking them, that's for sure. So even if the Rangers do not come out with all the power, if they're just patient, they could have a really, really good day here. I do definitely take your point for the fact that they could be owned. So that might be even more reasoning to give a longer look to the White Sox on the other side. All right, we got Giants and Brewers in Milwaukee. Kyle Harrison taking on the Brew Crew and Freddie Peralta up against the Giants. The Giants get a park upgrade. They have a little bit of power here with a 171 ISO against righties. They also strike out, so a 25% clip already. Freddie has struggled as of late. It's not the best park for pitching, but he's kind of the best overall value arm of the slate, in my opinion. He's not 10K, but on this slate, you would gladly pay it. On the other side, Kyle Harrison doesn't seem like the best spot. Park downgrade, 170 ISO being allowed to righties. The Brewers do have a little bit of power, but most of it is coming from the right side too. So I think the Brewers are okay. The main thing out of this game for me is going to be Fred, though.
Same. Giants are not really on my radar because I'm playing a ton of Peralta, regardless of his poor form. Milwaukee is one of my favorite stacks. I think Harrison's kind of mediocre overall. Not a big strikeout guy, especially against righties. Milwaukee's got okay power from the right side, like you said. So I don't think the Brewers are going to be popular, but I'll be getting to them, it looks like.
No, how could they be? Texas looks good. Braves look good. You got a game in Coors. Dodgers are on the slate. The Boston game looks good. So, yeah, 100%. 52.5% hard hit rate against righties this year. And like you said, 20% K rate, 7% decline from the left side. So it is definitely an advantageous spot for the Brewers righties. A little surprised that William Contreras' ISO against Southpaws here, to be honest. And same with Willie Adame. So, like, honestly, I think they have more upside than what the numbers are kind of indicating. Worth noting, the Giants do have some power. It is a park upgrade. And Freddie, along with Chris Sale, is projecting for about 50% ownership across the slate. So, honestly, the Twins and the Giants are not fun stacks, but they are major leverage stacks on this slate, given the crazy ownership. And both of them are capable. So, I will. If I was going 150 lamps, I would definitely have a little bit of a sprinkling of both of those teams. All right, we got Miami at Coors again. Max Meyer facing the Rockies, and we have Kyle Freeland taking on the Fish. That game definitely went full Coors yesterday. The day before that, it did not. So it'll be interesting to see where it lands. Not interested in the pitching, even though you could argue it just because these. I know. I was just going to say you could argue for it just because the offenses are not actually good. They're just going to benefit from this park. That said, I'm still not personally interested in the pitching that much. I just don't want to really go after these offenses because they're probably going to be really chalky. Very much in play, nothing wrong with them, but it's still the Rockies and the Marlins. So I'll gladly fade and get different with other offenses.
Yeah, I'm still playing both as stacks. Obviously, it's a great spot for both. Best park on the slate by a mile. So it's okay if you get to it. It's just a lot to be paying for a team like Miami. I'm not really playing Meyer. The pitcher I have interest in is Freeland, just because he's 5'2", or 5'5" rather, and the pitching beyond the top 2 or 3 is just brutal. So I think you can punt with him. He projects for like 9 points from what I'm looking at. I think 10 to 12 I'd be thrilled with at 5'5" on this slate. So I think that's not unreasonable to expect. Matchup's fine enough once you get past the Coors factor. But on the flip side, I'm still playing some Miami. Norby, Berger, Otto Lopez look like decent values. Berger being pricey, but pretty much the only good hitter they have. And then Colorado against Meyer. Totally fine with that too. They're also pricey, but I think they have a little more power than the Marlins do.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm okay with going to the Coors bats for sure. There's nothing wrong with them. And it's not like, Kyle Freeland is a viable punt because he's facing the Marlins. He's 5.5K, but 217 ISO allowed to righties, like a 52% hard hit rate to righties, only 17% whiff rate. So nothing here looks great for him, and he's facing basically all righties. I don't see a lefty in the projected Miami lineup. So I don't think that is something I'm going to do, but I understand why you're doing it. All right, we got the Mets and the Diamondbacks in Arizona. Luis Severino taking on Arizona, and on the other side, Eduardo Rodriguez. Two certainly decent pitchers, but I don't feel great about either of them. I think they're kind of priced out here. Eduardo's at 8.5K. Severino 7.3 is a little bit better, but I don't like going against Arizona at all. I think you got Mets righties look pretty good here against Eduardo, who has a 14% K rate this year. It's a very small sample size, but so far not striking out righties. It's given up a 255 ISO to the right side. Obviously, Pete Alonso season. Lindor can switch over. You got Marte, but JD Martinez definitely has some pop from the right side. And for Arizona, they're always in play for me if the guy they're facing is going to be owned. I think this is just one of those classic survive games for someone like Severino. So if I did anything here, it'd just be Mets.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page. They kind of raked lefties this season. Vientos, you can add to the mix there. At the top of the lineup, even Jose Iglesias is kind of hitting well. I don't know why or how sustainable that is, but
417 WOBA. Okay.
And then Francisco Alvarez is a pretty good hitting catcher for power historically. So I do like the stack quite a bit. I think Erod, like you said, is a little pricey. Don't love it. Severino, not on my radar. Arizona, definitely more of a secondary stack. But if I had to pick anything in this game, it would definitely be a Met stack.
Yeah, all these guys look honestly pretty good. Even Harrison Bader is a traditional lefty masher, not grading out well on the season, but historically he's somebody we can look at for sure. All right, last game of the night, we got the Orioles visiting the Dodgers. Corbin Burns taking on LA, and Walker Buehler on the other side against the Orioles. Buehler's been god awful basically all year. ERA over 6. Has he had a positive point in the last 4 games? His price is all the way down to 7K. Yeah, he's had -1, 2.7, -6, 6.5, 2. Those are his games. Gosh. So the name and the price make you stop for a second, but the Orioles are not a fun matchup. He has not been good. I think the Orioles are firmly in play for sure. On the other side, oops, what did I do there? Okay, and sorry about that. On the other side are the Dodgers. Corbin Burns has not been that much better lately. He's just been kind of there. Obviously, he's facing a full strength LA squad. His K rate against lefties is down to 19.9%, and they have a lot of those to throw at him. I mean, Dodgers are going to go completely ignored because people are going to look at Corbin Burns and they're going to be like, don't want to play the Dodgers. Dodgers at home it's always fun. Dodgers against a guy who's a bit overrated here is even more fun, in my opinion. I really like the Dodgers as an unowned GPP stack.
Yeah, I'm not going to be playing them at all. It looks like it's kind of whatever.
That's your mistake.
I'm willing to live with that mistake. It's just, I don't know, like Burns is still a good pitcher, even if the strikeouts are down. I'm not dying to pick on him with a pricey stack. I think Buehler is the guy I'd much rather target, given his horrible form all year. But Baltimore is also widely expensive, so you're probably going to have to do something like play Kyle Freeland if you want to stack them fully, which is viable. Like I've said, I think they're a very high upside stack. It is a good park for power. So Baltimore is the team I'm much more on board with on this slate, but obviously a Dodgers stack is always something you can do, especially if it's going to be 5% owned or less.
Right. And that's really what I'm saying. I'm not saying the Dodgers are my number one stack by any means. I just think anytime you can go into an 8-game slate or whatever it is and get the Dodgers completely ignored, that's kind of fun, I think. And obviously Burns he's not been good. So it's not like you're putting them up against Chris Sale or something, and you need a lot to go your way for it to happen. You just need him to keep being who he's been lately, and you can have a chance. All right, to wrap things up here, why don't we just recap? If you had to pick one stack to build around, ownership included or aside, who is that going to be?
Probably Texas if you don't care about ownership, and if you do, I would say it's probably the Brewers.
Yeah, I'm definitely warming up to the Brewers. I think coming in, Atlanta was my favorite stack. I still really like them quite a bit. Honestly, I'm going to be pretty spread out on this slate. I did when I did my Reddit write up earlier. Chicago was the stack I landed on. The biggest reason why, the White Sox, by the way, Cubs are not on the slate, but is because I went with Sale and Peralta. I am eating the pitching chalk, and one of the best ways to do that is to get a super, super cheap stack that makes sense, and they have a really good matchup. So I think the White Sox are a pretty fun team to build around. Whether you go full 5-man or not is completely up to you. But yeah, I am with you. As far as pitching goes, I'm assuming we're in unison here. The number one pitcher to build around is probably Chris Sale, and if it's not, it's Freddie.
Yep.
All right. Well, that will do it for us. Hopefully we helped you out a little bit. If we did, give this video a like and also consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching and good luck.